creators of South Park have reached a $1.5 billion streaming deal with Paramount, according to the LA Times.
Explosive take on billion-dollar contracts, Jesus in public schools, and a Trump-Saddam hybrid into one massive punchline. And in between, a brutal takedown of Paramount, Trump, and the collapsing media landscape that lets power get away with everything. This episode isn't just outrageous. It's one of the boldest and most self-aware moves Trey Parker and Matt Stone have made in years. To see why, we have to step back and look at the bigger picture. In July 2025, South Park dropped a bombshell, not just on screens. After more than 2 decades of pushing boundaries, Trey Parker and Matt Stone signed a jaw-dropping $1.5 billion deal with Paramount Global. The agreement promised 50 new episodes over 5 years and handed exclusive streaming rights to Paramount+. The entire South Park library, a cornerstone of animated satire, would now live under one roof. It was a landmark moment for the franchise and the media company alike. On paper, the deal looked like a win-win. South Park would be funded well into the future, and Paramount could rely on the show's rabid fan base to boost their streaming platform. But just days after signing the contract, Parker and Stone did something no one expected. They bit the hand that fed them. In the season 27 premiere, Sermon on the Mount, the show takes direct aim at Paramount. The plot doesn't just mention the company, it practically puts them on trial. Jesus, forced to return to South Park Elementary, explains that his presence is part of a legal settlement with Paramount. It's a satirical jab at how corporations exert control over content creators, even those with massive followings and big deals. The context for this goes deeper. Earlier that summer, Paramount settled a lawsuit with Donald Trump for $16 million. The case involved a disputed interview on CBS's 60 Minutes with Kamala Harris, which Trump claimed was edited to damage his campaign. Paramount denied any wrongdoing, but the settlement raised eyebrows. Then, days later, CBS canceled Stephen Colbert's The Late Show, a program long known for its critiques of Trump. Though CBS cited financial reasons, the optics suggested political pressure was a factor. All of this brewed just as the South Park deal closed. And Parker and Stone, never ones to play it safe, used their comeback episode to torch the entire situation. They didn't hint or imply. They called it out with full-blown narrative satire. It's not often a show mocks its own network weeks after securing a billion-dollar contract, but South Park has never cared much for protocol. Season 27 opens with a classic South Park setup, but this time, the stakes feel unusually real. It begins with Cartman learning that NPR, his favorite liberal-leaning radio station, has been canceled. The cause? The president ordered it off the air. For Cartman, this is personal. He launches into one of his trademark tirades, terrified that NPR is just the first domino. His concern isn't about freedom of the press. It's about losing his comfort zone of chaos. Soon after, the school is ordered to attend a mandatory assembly hosted by PC Principal, a character originally created to mock over-the-top political correctness. But in a dramatic twist, PC Principal announces he's found salvation in Jesus Christ, and that only faith can bring back stability to these turbulent times. He even changes his name to Power Christian Principal. The irony is sharp. The character who once enforced woke ideology is now preaching religion in public school. Jesus himself arrives in South Park, quoting disjointed scripture while students stare in confusion. Stan tells his parents what happened, and Randy, ever the clueless adult, consults ChatGPT to figure out how to feel about it. It's a perfect dig at how AI is becoming a crutch for basic decision-making. Meanwhile, Cartman has a meltdown. With wokeness in retreat and his offensive antics no longer shocking anyone, he spirals into an identity crisis. For a character who thrives on pushing buttons, losing that reaction is like losing oxygen. His desperation escalates until he threatens a joint suicide pact with Butters, who scrambles to keep hope alive. The most jaw-dropping moment in Sermon on the Mount doesn't come from Jesus descending on a public school, or even Cartman's existential spiral. It arrives when the camera pans to the Oval Office and reveals who's in charge: Donald Trump, or more specifically, a twisted reincarnation of Saddam Hussein with Trump's face. This isn't metaphor. Longtime fans immediately recognized the callback. In South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, 1999, Saddam Hussein was portrayed with a photo-pasted head and a hilariously exaggerated personality. He was manipulative, loud, petty, and also Satan's boyfriend. Fast forward to 2025, and that same format returns. Only now, it's Trump. The implication is loud and clear. The former president has become the very caricature of dictatorship the show once ridiculed in Saddam. The dialogue is pulled almost verbatim from the old Saddam episodes. Lines like, "Relax, guy," and "Iran, Iraq, what's the difference?" are resurrected, now used by Trump Hussein to brush off serious questions and mock foreign leaders. The message isn't subtle. South Park is calling out the dangers of unchecked power, the erosion of facts, and the absurdity of authoritarian rhetoric. In one scene, Canada's Prime Minister storms into the Oval Office to protest trade tariffs. Trump Hussein threatens him with bombings, casually confusing Middle Eastern countries. The tension in the scene is undercut by absurdity, making the message even sharper. The dictator doesn't care about consequences, only dominance and image. That image becomes literal when Trump is shown strolling the White House, surrounded by nude portraits of himself. Later, he appears in bed with Satan, echoing the original storyline with Hussein. It's grotesque and ridiculous, but deeply deliberate. South Park's satire thrives on exaggeration, and here it's used to reveal how political ego can become dangerous delusion. What makes this callback so effective is that it doesn't rely on nostalgia. It retools a known device to critique a modern political figure with fresh urgency. The show isn't just comparing Trump to Hussein. It's saying they're interchangeable when power is abused. If there's one moment in the episode that cuts deepest, it's not aimed at Trump. It's a direct hit on Paramount. In a gutsy, almost surreal twist, South Park turns its satire toward its own corporate overlords. That's right. Just days after signing a $1.5 billion content deal with Paramount Global, Matt Stone and Trey Parker used their platform to expose the company's entanglement in political compromise, legal fear, and media control. This isn't buried in subtext, it's front and center. Jesus, now an unwilling player in the cultural war, explains to the town of South Park that he didn't want to return. He was forced back into schools as part of a settlement with Paramount. And if they don't stop protesting, they'll end up like Colbert. It's not a metaphor. It's a direct reference to the cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, which was announced just after Paramount's $16 million settlement with Trump. The episode connects dots that media outlets were too cautious to fully draw. Colbert, a loud critic of Trump, gets taken off air. Paramount settles a controversial lawsuit. South Park, now under that same corporate umbrella, is given an enormous payday. And what do Parker and Stone do? They expose it all, with fire. What's remarkable is how self-aware the show becomes in doing this. They're not just criticizing the system, they're acknowledging their place in it. The creators could have taken their payday and played it safe. Instead, they turned the spotlight on the contradictions of modern media deals, how art is often used to launder the image of power. Eric Cartman's role in this episode doesn't revolve around politics or religion, but something deeper: relevance. With the collapse of woke culture in the town of South Park, Cartman begins to unravel. The usual targets of his offensive antics, whether it's minorities, religions, or marginalized groups, don't seem to react anymore. And for a character whose ego thrives on triggering outrage, this new reality is unbearable. From the start, Cartman is noticeably shaken by NPR's cancellation. Not because he's a fan of liberal discourse, but because it signals a shift in cultural dynamics. He says it himself: the world is no longer sensitive, and that makes him invisible. If no one is offended, he no longer holds power. That's a death sentence for Cartman's identity. His panic accelerates when even PC Principal, formerly the face of institutional wokeness, abandons the ideology for Christian traditionalism. Cartman sees this as confirmation that his world has flipped upside down. The structures that once gave him an audience to offend have dissolved. In a moment of despair, Cartman declares he's going to kill himself and take Butters with him. It's dark, yet absurd. Delivered with that classic deadpan cruelty, the scene feels surreal and bizarrely hilarious. But underneath it lies a commentary on how individuals obsessed with attention can spiral when the spotlight dims. Butters, ever the innocent sidekick, becomes the voice of reason. He pleads with Cartman to hang on, suggesting that woke culture might make a comeback. He even sets a deadline, Tuesday, as if cultural trends follow a calendar. It's South Park's way of poking fun at the idea that societal movements are just temporary trends waiting for a reset. The genius of this subplot is how it treats cultural sensitivity, not as a moral debate, but as a psychological currency. In the end, his breakdown isn't just about politics, it's existential. Just when it seemed the episode had reached peak chaos, South Park takes it one layer deeper, straight into hell, literally and metaphorically. The return of Satan marks a surreal and satirical twist that reconnects the new season with the show's older, infamous storylines. But this time, he's not with Saddam Hussein. He's back in bed with Donald Trump, or at least the Trump-Hussein hybrid. This pairing isn't just for shock value, it's a callback with heavy implications. In earlier seasons and the 1999 film, Satan was caught in a toxic, abusive relationship with Hussein. The dynamic was both hilarious and disturbingly poignant. Now, placing Trump in that same position instantly casts him in a familiar light: manipulative, narcissistic, and immune to shame. The bedroom scene is grotesquely absurd. Trump clambers into Satan's bed, expecting affection, only to be coldly rebuffed. The moment highlights Trump's need for validation and power, even in private. But South Park doesn't stop there. Satan confronts him about a far more serious issue: the Epstein list. When asked directly if he's on it, Trump dodges. He repeats his infamous line, "Relax, guy," brushing off the accusation with eerie familiarity. That deflection mirrors the real-life controversies swirling around Trump's historical connections to Jeffrey Epstein. This moment stands out because of how delicately South Park balances its comedy with genuine discomfort. The show has always been willing to address taboo topics, but here it underscores the public's unanswered questions about Epstein's client list. By framing the confrontation between Satan and Trump in a ridiculous yet emotionally charged bedroom scene, it forces viewers to consider what accountability really looks like in the absurd theater of politics. The satire is multi-layered. Trump's obsession with lawsuits, image control, and denial is mocked at every turn. He threatens to sue a portrait artist over the size of his genitals in a painting. And when Satan tries to draw a comparison to a past lover, Trump shuts down the conversation. Satan, ironically, is the moral compass of the episode. He's disgusted, not just by Trump's behavior, but by the ease with which he manipulates everyone around him. For a show that made Satan a sympathetic character decades ago, this episode is a natural evolution. It flips expectations and once again proves that South Park's most ridiculous characters often deliver its most cutting truths. By the time the scene ends, you're left laughing, but also unsettled. And that's exactly where South Park wants you. As the episode barrels toward its climax, South Park shifts gears from political chaos to technological satire, without losing any of its bite. One of the final sequences features what looks like a live-action advertisement. Donald Trump, disheveled and delirious, stumbles through a sun-scorched desert, muttering incoherently, before stripping naked and being endorsed by a literal representation of his anatomy. But it's not really live action, it's AI, specifically a deep fake, crafted with tech that South Park's creators have been quietly mastering for years. The use of deepfake technology in this episode isn't a gimmick. Trey Parker and Matt Stone are no strangers to pushing digital boundaries. In fact, they co-created a deepfake series called Sassy Justice in 2020, where they used AI-generated faces of public figures to mock everything from politics to media manipulation. The series flew under the radar for some, but it was a testing ground, and now its DNA is all over this episode. The Trump desert hallucination feels absurd and surreal, but underneath the slapstick, the sequence skewers how propaganda works in modern media. The campaign ad is an exaggerated version of political messaging, polished visuals, hollow content, and emotional manipulation wrapped in fake authenticity. That it's created using synthetic media makes the critique even sharper. The audience can no longer trust what they see or hear. And that's the point. The Trump deepfake wanders through a fabricated world, symbolizing how public personas are increasingly detached from reality. The AI-rendered backdrop and plastic dialogue reflect the hollowness of political theater, how appearances often carry more weight than substance. This also ties back to the broader theme of control. AI, like political power, is being bent to serve whoever wields it. Whether it's Randy using ChatGPT for moral guidance, or the creators deep-faking Trump into oblivion, the show emphasizes how easily technology can be misused, not just for laughs, but for manipulation. South Park is using the same tech it's critiquing, but in doing so, it's forcing viewers to confront their own complicity. In the middle of all the satire, one reference hits harder than the rest. When Jesus warns the townspeople of South Park, they'll end up like Colbert if they keep pushing back. It's more than a punchline. It's a chilling nod to a real-world event that unfolded just weeks before the episode aired. CBS, owned by Paramount, announced the abrupt cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, a flagship late-night program known for its relentless critique of Donald Trump. Officially, the network blamed budget cuts, but the timing was suspicious. It came shortly after Paramount paid $16 million to settle Trump's lawsuit over a disputed 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. That payment, paired with the Colbert cancellation, sparked outrage and speculation. Had the network folded under political pressure? Was it a coincidence? By embedding Colbert's name into a scene with Jesus, of all characters, South Park amplified the absurdity of media censorship and corporate self-preservation. It was a subtle suggestion that creative voices, even powerful ones, are expendable when they disrupt the wrong agenda. And if someone as prominent as Colbert can be sidelined, What hope does the average protester have? South Park's message was grim. In the current media climate, satire isn't just under fire, it's a liability. Late-night television, once a platform for challenging authority, has become increasingly sanitized. Hosts are either pushed out or softened up. Whether by ratings, internal politics, or external pressure, the genre that once gave us Letterman, Stewart, and Colbert has started to lose its teeth. South Park isn't just mocking media companies. It's mourning the slow erosion of dissent in mainstream entertainment. It shows how quickly satire can be neutralized when profitability is at stake. When the cost of speaking truth becomes too high, even the boldest voices get quiet, or cut off entirely. After everything, the lawsuits, the Jesus contract, the Trump deepfakes, the naked paintings, and the metaphysical breakdown of cancel culture, one line cuts through the chaos like a warning bell. South Park is over. It's said plainly by Jesus, a character turned corporate mouthpiece, under duress from his own legal obligations to Paramount. And it lands with weight. The phrase isn't about the literal end of the show. South Park is contracted for 50 more episodes under its billion-dollar deal. What it hints at is a broader cultural exhaustion of censorship, outrage cycles, and the pressure to please everyone. It's the show's way of asking, how long can something this bold survive in a world that punishes risk? This question has hovered over South Park for years. Critics have wondered whether Parker and Stone could keep the show fresh without compromising its edge. Would age dull their bite? But if this premiere is any indicator, the answer is still a resounding no. If anything, they've sharpened the blade. The episode feels like a time capsule and a war cry. It acknowledges how drastically the cultural landscape has shifted since South Park's debut in 1997. Back then, it was a scrappy, foul-mouthed upstart. Now it's legacy media with a streaming deal. The rebels are inside the castle. By satirizing its own survival, South Park opens the door to a bigger conversation. One about the future of subversive art in a corporatized age. Can satire thrive when the systems it mocks also fund it? Can you bite the hand that feeds you and still stay fed? These aren't hypothetical questions for Parker and Stone. The show isn't over. But it's evolving. And if this episode is any clue, South Park plans to go down swinging, mocking presidents, studios, and even itself. It's not a eulogy. It's a mission statement. One that says, loud and clear, if the end is coming, we'll be the ones writing the script. And we're not done laughing yet. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. If you enjoyed this dive, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. Until next time, stay curious and keep watching the skies.